Snow was falling heavily from the dark sky, covering the ground in a thick white sheet. The wind howled through the empty valley like a wild beast, biting at anything alive. An alien girl stumbled forward, her body shaking from the cold. Her arms clutched something close to her chest, a small creature, her pet, wrapped in the last piece of cloth she had. The pet was weak, its breathing shallow, and its body had grown stiff from the icy air. She whispered softly to it, her voice trembling, "Hold on, please, just a little longer." Her legs sank deep into the snow with every step. Her feet were numb, and she could no longer feel her toes. She tried to move quickly, but her strength was leaving her. Each breath was heavy, and her chest ached. Her alien eyes, glowing faintly in the night, searched desperately for shelter. There was nothing but endless white and the sharp cry of the storm. The pet whimpered weakly, its eyes half closed. She hugged it tighter, even though her own hands were turning blue. Her body shook, not only from cold but also from fear. She knew the truth. If she did not find shelter soon, both of them would die here. She fell to her knees in the snow, her tears freezing instantly on her cheeks. For a moment, she thought of giving up. She thought of closing her eyes and letting the storm take her. But when she looked at the small creature in her arms, she forced herself to stand again. She began to sing softly, a song from her homeworld. It was a lullaby, one she used to sing when her pet was small. The sound was broken, almost lost in the wind, but it was the only warmth she had left. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Don't leave me, not yet." The snow piled higher, the cold stabbing through her bones like knives. Her vision blurred. She knew the end was near. The night grew darker, and her body gave way. She collapsed into the snow, curling herself around her pet to shield it from the storm. Her heartbeat slowed, and her eyelids grew heavy. She whispered one last word, "Goodbye." The world was fading, silent except for the storm's endless scream. Then she heard something, a sound that didn't belong to the storm. Heavy, steady footsteps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They grew louder, closer. Her eyes opened slightly, but she thought she was dreaming. A dark figure was moving through the snow, tall and broad. The shape pushed against the wind like it was nothing. For a moment, she panicked. Was this a hunter? Someone come to finish her? She tried to move, but her body refused. The figure stopped right in front of her. A beam of light cut through the snowstorm. She blinked, her vision clearing just enough to see. It was a human. A real human, wrapped in heavy winter clothing, a hood pulled low, and a strange glowing lamp strapped to his chest. His breath came out in thick clouds, but his steps were strong and confident. He looked down at her, his eyes narrowing. She could not read his expression, but she felt the weight of his gaze. For a long moment, he didn't move, and fear stabbed her heart. She thought he would turn away, leave her to die. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. Then, slowly, the human crouched down. The light revealed her pale, frozen face and the small pet shivering weakly against her chest. His gloved hand reached forward, brushing snow off her shoulder. She flinched, too weak to resist. He studied her, his breath heavy, and then he let out a low sigh. Without a word, he slipped his arms under her body and lifted both her and the pet. Warmth. That was the first thing she felt. His body heat, even through his thick clothes, was like fire against her frozen skin. Her head rested against his chest, and she could hear the steady, powerful beat of his heart. She wanted to fight, to ask why, but her voice was gone. He carried her as if she weighed nothing, his boots sinking into the snow but never slowing. She heard the crunch of every step. The storm still raged around them, but for the first time she felt safe. Her pet stirred weakly in her arms, warmed by the human's embrace. She forced her eyes open again, just enough to see his jaw set with determination, his face half hidden in shadow. The alien girl's thoughts spun wildly. Why would a human save her? Weren't they enemies? She had heard stories of humans, violent, merciless, cold as steel. Yet here was one, holding her carefully, protecting both her and her pet. She wanted to ask his name, but her strength failed. Darkness pulled at her again, but this time it was different. She was not surrendering to death. She was drifting into sleep, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Her last memory before her eyes closed was the sound of his voice, deep, steady, speaking words she could not understand. But even without knowing the language, she knew the meaning. He was saying, "You'll be fine. I've got you." And with those words, the night that was meant to be her end had suddenly changed. The storm still howled outside, but in the human's arms, she and her pet had found something she thought impossible: hope. The first thing she felt was warmth. A soft heat touched her frozen skin, so strange that she thought she was dreaming. Slowly, her heavy eyelids lifted, and she saw flickering light dancing across wooden walls. The air smelled of smoke and burning wood. She blinked again, her vision clearer now. She was lying on a rough bed, wrapped in thick blankets that smelled faintly of dust and leather. For the first time in days, her body was no longer shaking from cold. Her eyes darted around, fear rising in her chest. This was not her home, and it was not any shelter she knew. She saw a fire burning in a stone fireplace, the flames crackling as they ate through logs. Strange objects hung on the walls, tools, weapons, and metal parts she did not recognize. Her heart raced. Where was she? She turned quickly, searching for the small creature that had been in her arms. Panic surged until she spotted it near the fire, curled up in a bundle of cloth. It was her pet. Its chest rose and fell slowly, weak but alive. A strange jacket, far too large for the little creature, was wrapped around it. She recognized it belonged to the human. Her breath caught. The human. Memories returned in a rush, the storm, her collapse, and the dark figure that lifted her from the snow. Her eyes moved cautiously to the corner of the room. He was there. The human sat in a chair, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. He was staring at the fire, silent, his face lit by the glow. His hood and coat were gone, revealing his sharp features and tired eyes. His clothes were simple but warm, patched in places, like he had lived out here for a long time. He hadn't noticed she was awake yet. His chest rose and fell slowly, calm, as if he had no fear of her. Her first thought was to escape. She pushed herself up, but her body was too weak. The blanket slipped down and she gasped softly. The human's head turned immediately. His eyes met hers. She froze. For a long moment, no one spoke. The fire crackled between them, the only sound in the room. His gaze dropped to the pet, then back to her. He didn't move closer. Instead, he reached to the side, picked up a wooden bowl, and slid it across the table toward her. Warm steam rose from it, carrying the smell of cooked vegetables and broth. He nodded once, his message clear: eat. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but her fear held her still. Was this a trap? Was the food poisoned? On her world, she had heard that humans could be merciless, feeding kindness only to gain control. She clutched the blanket tighter, her eyes never leaving him. The human didn't argue. He didn't try to convince her. He simply leaned back in his chair, stretched out his legs, and stared at the fire again. His silence was strange, almost unsettling. He didn't act like an enemy. He acted like someone who didn't care if she trusted him or not. Her pet stirred and gave a weak cry. She looked down, her heart softening. The little creature tried to crawl toward the smell of food, still wrapped in the human's jacket. Without thinking, she reached for the bowl and brought it closer. She dipped her fingers in, lifted a bit of the broth, and touched it to the pet's mouth. Slowly, it licked the drops, shivering less. Relief filled her chest. The human glanced at them, then turned back to the fire again. No words, no demand, just silence. She tasted the broth herself, cautiously. It was hot, almost burning her tongue, but it filled her stomach with a warmth she had nearly forgotten. She ate slowly, her eyes still on the human, waiting for him to reveal his real reason for saving her. But he did not move. He did not even look at her again. Time passed. The fire burned lower, the shadows in the cabin growing darker. She felt uneasy. Why was he doing this? She finally found the courage to speak, though her voice was weak. Why? Why help me? The human turned his head slightly, as if he had heard her but wasn't sure he should answer. He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he shook his head once and said, in a low, tired voice, "No one should die in the cold." That was all. He turned back to the fire. She waited, hoping for more, but no other words came. His silence was heavier than his voice. She lay back on the bed, clutching her pet against her chest again. She wanted to believe him, but her fear whispered otherwise. Was this human truly different, or was he waiting for something? Her eyes grew heavy, but her mind stayed sharp with suspicion. The human, however, did not move from his chair. Even as the fire dimmed, he sat there, awake, as if guarding her. She watched him through half-closed eyes. His face looked tired, but there was no cruelty in it. Still, she did not trust. She could not. The storm outside beat against the wooden walls, but inside, the fire kept them safe. She closed her eyes, listening to the sound of the flames and the steady rhythm of the human's breathing. For the first time, she felt torn. Her world had taught her to fear humans, but this one had saved her life. And as sleep pulled her under, she realized something frightening. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had saved her not for gain, but simply because he could. And that thought, more than the warmth of the fire, stayed with her as she drifted into uneasy dreams. The storm outside still howled, but inside the cabin it was quiet. The alien girl lay on the bed, pretending to be asleep, but her eyes were half open. She watched the human carefully. He had not moved from his chair. He sat with his arms crossed, eyes closed, but his breathing was too steady, too alert. She knew he was awake. Her pet shifted in her arms, making a soft sound. She stroked its head gently to calm it. The little creature leaned into her hand, warm now thanks to the human's fire and jacket. A strange feeling filled her chest. She had almost lost it in the snow, but here it was breathing again, and the one who had made it possible was the human. That thought unsettled her. She turned her eyes back to him. His face was strong, his jaw marked by a few faint scars. His hands, resting on his knees, looked rough, as if used to work, not softness. He was not watching her, yet she could not shake the feeling that he was aware of her every move. The silence stretched, heavy between them. She wanted to speak, but fear kept her mouth closed. The fire cracked and threw sparks upward. The shadows on the wall danced. She shivered, but not from cold. She shivered from doubt. What if this human was only waiting for her strength to return before demanding something in return? What if saving her life was not kindness, but part of a plan? Her eyes drifted to the wooden table. There were knives there, sharp and long. Near the door leaned a weapon, something large shaped for human hands. She had seen humans use weapons like that. They were deadly. Her heart raced. She pulled the blanket closer around herself, trying to make her breathing sound even, as if she were truly asleep. But then she heard something. The human's voice, soft, almost a whisper. He wasn't speaking to her. He was speaking to himself. She could not understand every word, but the tone was tired, heavy with loneliness. He spoke slowly, pausing often, as if he was carrying a weight no one else could see. His voice was not cruel, not angry. It was almost sad. She listened harder. Her alien ears caught words like family, gone, and alone. Her chest tightened. She understood then. He was not talking about her. He was talking about something from his past. Still, she could not let her guard down. She closed her eyes fully, pretending to drift into sleep, but her mind stayed sharp. She felt every sound in the cabin, the crackle of fire, the creak of wood as he shifted in his chair, the slow rise and fall of his breathing. Her pet moved again, giving a weak cry. The human's head turned instantly. She sensed his eyes on her. Fear froze her body, but she kept still, pretending to sleep. Then she felt it, a soft weight being placed over her. She opened her eyes just slightly. The human had stood, pulled another blanket from a shelf, and laid it gently across her. He didn't linger. He didn't touch her skin. He simply returned to his chair, as silent as before. Her heart beat fast. This was not what she expected. If he wanted power over her, he would not act with such quiet care. But still, confusion tangled her thoughts. Why would a human act this way? Hours passed, and the storm outside slowly began to fade. The silence inside grew deeper. Her suspicion wrestled with the strange warmth she felt when she looked at her pet safe by the fire. Finally, unable to hold it back, she whispered, "Why?" The word slipped from her lips before she could stop it. The human looked at her, his eyes steady. For a moment, she thought he would not answer. Then he said in a low voice, "Because no one deserves to be left to die. Not you, not your friend." His words hung in the air. She stared at him, searching his face for lies. But all she saw was truth. His eyes, though tired, held no cruelty. She wanted to believe him. She almost did, but fear still whispered in her mind. She hugged her pet close, saying nothing more. The human didn't press. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze returning to the fire. His silence was strange, but it was not the silence of a predator. It was the silence of someone who carried his own pain, his own battles. She lay awake long after that, her mind full of questions she dared not ask. Who was this human? Why was he alone out here? And what did he truly want? Sleep finally pulled her under, but even in dreams, her thoughts were full of him. She dreamed of snow, of fire, of his steady footsteps carrying her from death. And when she woke again, the human was still there, sitting in his chair, guarding the fire, as if he had never once allowed himself to rest. The morning light slipped through the small cracks of the wooden cabin. The storm outside had passed, leaving the world quiet and covered in deep snow. Inside, the fire still burned low, and the air was warmer than it had been all night. The alien girl slowly opened her eyes. Her body felt heavy, but she was alive, and so was her pet, curled against her chest with a faint purr. Her gaze moved to the human. He was sitting near the fireplace, sharpening a knife with calm, steady movements. The sound of the blade against the stone echoed softly in the room. His expression was unreadable, serious and distant, like a man lost in his thoughts. She tightened her grip on the blanket around her shoulders. For a long time, she just watched him, her mind filled with questions. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but sharp. "Why did you help me?" The human stopped sharpening the knife. He looked at her with steady eyes. Silence stretched, and for a moment she thought he would ignore her. Then he set the knife aside and leaned forward. "Because leaving you in the snow would make me no better than the ones who started all this." His words confused her. She frowned. "You know what I am. My people and yours, we are enemies." His jaw tightened. He looked away from her, his gaze fixed on the fire. "I know." His voice was low, rough. "I know too well." Her chest tightened. There was pain in his tone, a weight she could almost feel. She waited, curiosity stronger than fear. At last he spoke again. "I had a family," he said slowly. "A wife, a little boy. They were caught in the war. Wrong place, wrong time. Bombs don't care about who's innocent." He paused, his hands curling into fists. "I buried them myself." The alien girl's breath caught. She had not expected such honesty, such raw pain. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The human shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "After that, I swore I'd never fight again. I came here, far from everyone, to live in silence, to forget." His eyes turned back to her, sharp and searching. "So when I found you, part of me wanted to keep walking, to leave you in the snow like life left my family. But," he paused, his voice breaking just slightly, "I couldn't. Not again." She felt her throat tighten. His pain was real, too real to be a trick. But still, fear held her heart. "And now, what do you want from me?" His eyes softened, though his face stayed serious. "Nothing. Just to know that saving you wasn't a mistake." Her mind swirled. Nothing? Could it be true? She had grown up hearing that humans always demanded something, always took more than they gave. Yet here he was, asking for nothing. The thought unsettled her more than cruelty ever could. Her pet stirred in her arms and gave a weak cry. She looked down, stroking its head gently. "On my world?" She whispered, "We are told that humans are merciless, that they enjoy watching others suffer, that they care only for themselves." The human gave a dry smile, full of sadness. "And on mine, we are told your kind is heartless, that you see us as animals, that you would never show mercy." His eyes met hers. Maybe both sides are wrong. Her heart skipped. His words touched something deep inside her. Could it be true? Could everything she had been taught be a lie? But still, mistrust clung to her like shadow. "How can I believe you?" she asked, her voice trembling. The human leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You don't have to. Trust isn't given in a night. But look at your friend there." He nodded toward the small creature. "Would it still be breathing if I wanted to harm you?" She followed his gaze. Her pet was alive, warm, wrapped in the human's jacket. She could not deny the truth. Without him, they would both have died. Silence filled the cabin again. The fire popped, sending sparks upward. She hugged her pet closer, her eyes still locked on the human. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to thank him, but the words felt dangerous, like they would bind her to him. The human stood and walked to the window. He pulled back the curtain slightly, peering outside at the endless snow. His shoulders looked heavy, as if carrying invisible weight. Without turning, he said quietly, "You don't have to trust me, but while you're here, you're safe." Her chest tightened. Safe. It was a word she had not felt in a long time. She lowered her head, her hands trembling as she stroked her pet. Safe. Could she really believe it? As the fire burned lower, her mind was full of doubt and strange hope. This human was not like the stories. He was broken, yes, but not cruel. He had saved her, cared for her, and asked for nothing in return. And though fear still clung to her heart, another thought now lived there too. A dangerous thought. Maybe this human was not her enemy. Maybe he was something else entirely. The night was calm, but the alien girl could not sleep. Her pet rested peacefully against her chest, its small body warm and steady now, but her own mind refused to rest. The human's words from earlier echoed in her thoughts. He had spoken of loss, of his family buried by war. His pain was real. Still, she could not silence the voice inside her that whispered caution. He was human. He was supposed to be her enemy. Could kindness truly exist between enemies? She sat up slightly, pulling the blanket tighter around her. The fire had burned low, but enough light remained to cast shadows across the wooden walls. The human sat near the door, a rifle leaning against the wall beside him. He seemed alert, though his body was still. His presence was strange. He was not a jailer, not a guard, but she felt watched all the same. Her pet stirred, giving a faint whimper. She stroked its back gently, whispering soft words from her language. The sound calmed her, though her heart still raced. Just as she began to drift into uneasy sleep, a new sound reached her ears. It was faint at first, almost hidden beneath the crackle of the fire and the whistling wind outside, but then it grew clearer, the crunch of boots on snow. Not one pair, but several. Her eyes widened. She turned to the human. He had already heard it. His head lifted sharply, his hand reaching for the rifle beside him. "Stay quiet," he said in a low voice, his eyes never leaving the door. His tone was calm but firm, carrying the weight of someone who had faced danger many times. Her breath caught. Who could it be? Hunters? Soldiers? Her people's enemies? Or worse, those who had been chasing her before the storm. She held her pet tightly, her heart pounding so loudly she thought the strangers outside might hear it. The footsteps grew louder. Then came voices, muffled by the walls but clear enough to understand. They were not human voices. They were harsh, commanding, the voices of hunters. The human moved quickly. He pointed toward a trapdoor in the floor near the back of the cabin. "Hide. Take the little one with you. Do not make a sound." Fear and hesitation filled her, but she obeyed. She lifted the wooden cover silently and slipped inside with her pet. The space beneath was small and dark, filled with the smell of earth and old wood. She crouched low, pulling the cover back into place. Darkness swallowed her, but through tiny cracks she could still see the glow of firelight above. The door of the cabin shook violently. A loud fist pounded against it. "Open! We know someone is inside!" The human stood calmly, rifle in hand, his face unreadable. He opened the door slowly, letting the freezing air rush in. 3 figures stepped inside, their bodies tall and armored, their faces hidden beneath helmets. Their weapons gleamed in the firelight. "We're looking for an escaped one of them said coldly. "Female, small creature with her. Have you seen them?" The human shook his head. His voice was steady, almost bored. "No one here but me." The alien girl held her breath in the darkness below. Her hands clutched her pet so tightly it whimpered softly, and she covered its mouth with trembling fingers. If they heard, if they looked too closely, they would find her. The hunters glanced around the cabin. Their eyes fell on the fire, the blankets, the second bowl on the table. The girl's heart stopped. They would know. They would see. One of them stepped closer to the bed, picking up the blanket she had used. He lifted it, sniffed the air. "Someone else was here," he hissed. The human didn't flinch. "A traveler," he said smoothly. "Half dead when I found him. He left at dawn, headed north before the storm cleared." The hunters narrowed their eyes. Why help anyone? The human's gaze hardened. "Because a corpse in my doorway attracts wolves. I prefer less trouble." For a tense moment, silence filled the cabin. The hunters studied him, their weapons shifting slightly. She felt sweat trickle down her neck despite the freezing air. Then, slowly, the leader gave a sharp nod. "If you're lying, human, we'll know. And when we return, we won't be merciful." They turned and left, their boots crunching in the snow as they disappeared into the distance. The door closed, leaving the cabin quiet again. The human stood still, rifle in hand, listening until the last sound of footsteps faded away. Only then did he move, setting the weapon aside and walking toward the trapdoor. Gently, he lifted it open. "Come out," he said quietly. The alien girl climbed out slowly, her body still shaking. Her pet clung to her, its small body trembling as much as hers. She looked at the human, her eyes wide with fear and something else, confusion. "You lied for me," she whispered. He shrugged, sitting back in his chair as though nothing had happened. "Better me lying than you dead." Her throat tightened. She wanted to ask why again, but the words would not come. She hugged her pet close, staring at the man who had risked his own life to protect her. The fire crackled softly. The storm outside was gone, but now a new storm lived in her heart. She had expected cruelty, expected betrayal, but what she found instead was something far more dangerous. She was beginning to believe in him. The cabin was silent again after the hunters had left, but the silence did not bring peace. The alien girl sat on the edge of the bed, her arms wrapped around her pet, her eyes fixed on the human. He was cleaning his rifle, his movements calm and steady, as if he had not just lied to armed strangers who could have killed him. The firelight flickered across his face, showing no fear, only quiet determination. Her chest was tight. She wanted to thank him, but the words would not come. Gratitude felt dangerous, like a chain around her neck. Instead, she whispered, "They will come back." The human looked up, meeting her gaze. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. "I know." He set the rifle aside, leaning back in his chair. "That's why you can't stay here." Her heart sank. She had expected it, but hearing the words still hurt. She held her pet tighter, shaking her head. "If I leave, they will find me. Out there, I will die." His jaw tightened. He stood, walking toward the window. Pulling back the curtain slightly, he stared out into the endless white. His voice was low when he answered. "And if you stay, they'll bring more men next time. They'll burn this place to the ground. You'll die, and so will I." Her stomach twisted. He was right. The hunters would not stop. They had seen too much already. But another thought struck her. "Why risk yourself at all?" she asked suddenly, her voice sharper than she intended. "Why not hand me over? You owe me nothing." The human turned, his eyes hard, his voice firm. "Because I won't let them decide who lives and who dies. Not again." The weight of his words hit her. He was thinking of his family, the ones he had lost. She felt her throat close. He wasn't helping her because she was special. He was helping her because he couldn't bear to let another life be stolen. Still, fear and doubt tangled inside her. She shook her head. "If I stay, you will die too. They will kill you for hiding me." He stepped closer, his presence strong but not threatening. "Maybe, but if you go now, you won't last a day. You know it. I know it." Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She looked down at her pet, who gazed back with trusting eyes, too innocent to understand the danger. She stroked its head, whispering softly in her language, "I don't want to lose you." The human watched her silently, his expression unreadable. Finally, he said, "We'll leave. Together." Her head snapped up. "What?" He nodded, firm. "At dawn, I know the paths through the mountains, places they won't search. If we move fast, we can reach safety." Her heart pounded. Part of her wanted to protest, to say she could not trust him. But another part, stronger, louder, felt relief. Not only because she would not be alone, but because he had chosen to share her danger instead of pushing her away. She shook her head slightly, her voice trembling. "Why do this for me?" The human knelt in front of her, his eyes level with hers. "Because no one should face death alone. Not you, not the little one, and not me." For the first time, she felt her fear weaken. His words carried no lies. His eyes were steady, full of pain, but also something else, something she could not name. Still, the danger was real. "They will hunt us," she whispered. He gave a small, grim smile. "Then let them try." The fire crackled between them, the only sound in the cabin. She stared at him, searching for any hint of cruelty, but found none. Only truth, only resolve. Her pet crawled from her arms onto his knee, curling up as if it trusted him completely. She froze, shocked. The creature had never gone to anyone but her. Yet here it was, pressing itself against him like he belonged to their small circle too. The human looked down at it, then back at her. "Even your friend knows." Something inside her broke. The wall of mistrust, built by years of fear and stories, began to crack. She lowered her head, her voice so quiet it was almost a breath. "I don't want you to die for me." He shook his head. "Then live. That will be enough." The hours passed slowly. She did not sleep. She sat by the fire, her pet in her lap, watching the human prepare supplies. He moved with quiet focus, gathering food, wrapping weapons, checking clothing. He worked like a man who had done this many times before, like survival was a second nature to him. Outside, the night deepened. The hunters were gone, but the threat hung over them like a shadow. Every creak of the wood, every gust of wind made her flinch. Yet whenever she looked at the human, calm settled over her. He was steady, unshaken. For reasons she did not understand, his presence made her believe they might survive. At last, the fire burned low. The human sat back in his chair, his eyes heavy but still watchful. The alien girl hugged her pet close, her heart still full of fear, but also something new. For the first time, she was not thinking only of survival. She was thinking of him, this strange human who had lost everything, yet still chose to protect her. Sleep finally pulled at her, and before her eyes closed, she whispered words she had never imagined saying to a human. "Thank you." The human looked at her, his face unreadable in the shadows. But his voice, deep and steady, answered softly, "Rest. Tomorrow everything changes." The first light of dawn touched the sky, turning the snow-covered world into a field of silver. The human was already awake, standing near the window with his rifle strapped across his back and a pack slung over his shoulder. His movements were quiet, efficient, as he checked every strap and buckle one last time. The alien girl stirred from her uneasy sleep, her pet curling against her chest with a soft whimper. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking at the dim light of morning, and saw him standing there, ready to leave. Her heart tightened. The reality of his words from the night before struck her now. They were leaving. Not just her, but him too. He was giving up the only safe place he had, his cabin, his fire, his little corner of peace, all for her and her fragile companion. She sat up, holding her pet close, and whispered, "You don't have to do this." The human turned, his eyes steady but tired. "Yes, I do." His voice was calm, as though the choice had already been made long before she spoke. "If you stay here, you'll die. If you run alone, you'll die. But if we go together, there's a chance." Her throat tightened, and she lowered her gaze. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was a fool for risking everything for someone who wasn't even his kind. But when she looked at him, when she saw the determination in his eyes, the words died in her chest. She stood slowly, her legs weak but steady enough to carry her. Her pet clung to her shoulder, its small claws gripping her clothing. The human handed her a heavy cloak lined with fur. "Put this on. The cold won't forgive carelessness." She hesitated, then pulled it around herself. It smelled faintly of him, wood smoke, leather, and something else she could not name. She felt strange wearing it, like stepping into his world. Without another word, he pushed open the door. A blast of icy wind rushed in, stealing her breath. The outside was blinding, the snow sparkling under the rising sun. She followed him out, her steps slow, careful. He moved with purpose, his boots crunching through the snow, leaving deep tracks behind. She struggled to keep up, her breath clouding in the air, but he slowed his pace so she would not fall behind. The world was silent except for the sound of their footsteps. The forest loomed around them, its branches heavy with snow, its silence almost alive. Every shadow seemed dangerous, every gust of wind a warning. She pulled the cloak tighter, her eyes darting to every sound. Hours passed. They climbed hills and crossed frozen streams, the human always leading, always scanning the path ahead. He seemed to know the land well, guiding them through places where the snow was thinner, where the trees offered cover. She wondered how long he had lived out here alone, how many times he had walked these paths with no one beside him. Her legs ached and her breath grew short, but she pushed forward. Whenever she felt she could not go on, she looked at the human's back. His steps never faltered. His strength seemed endless. Somehow, that gave her strength too. But danger was never far. As the sun began to sink, they heard voices in the distance, harsh, echoing through the trees. The hunters. They had returned, searching again. The human raised his hand, signaling her to stop. He crouched low, motioning for her to follow. They moved silently through the underbrush, every step careful, every breath shallow. The voices grew louder, then faded as the hunters passed by another trail. Her heart pounded so hard, she feared it would give them away. When the danger passed, the human exhaled slowly. "We keep moving," he whispered. She nodded, too shaken to speak. Night fell before they finally stopped. He found a small hollow in the side of a hill, half hidden by fallen branches. It was barely large enough for the two of them, but it was shelter. He built a small fire, keeping it low so the smoke would not rise high into the sky. They sat close, the heat wrapping around them in the darkness. Her pet lay between them, warmed by the flames, its breathing steady and calm. She stared at the fire, her mind heavy with everything that had happened. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "You left your home, for me." The human looked at her across the fire. His face was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of truth. A house is just wood and stone. Lives are harder to replace. Her chest ached at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She had been hunted, treated as less than nothing. Yet here was a human, once her enemy, giving up everything just so she and her pet could live. She lowered her gaze, her hand stroking the small creature's back. Her lips trembled, and before she could stop herself, she whispered, "You changed everything." The fire crackled softly, the words hanging between them. The human did not answer right away. He looked into the flames, his face shadowed, his thoughts hidden. Then, finally, he said quietly, "Maybe you changed me too." She lifted her eyes, meeting his gaze. For the first time, she saw not just pain in his expression, but something else. Something fragile, something hopeful. They sat in silence after that, the fire burning low. The world outside was still full of danger, but inside that small hollow, there was something stronger than fear. As the night deepened, she leaned back against the wall of the shelter, her pet curled against her chest, her eyes growing heavy. The last thing she saw was the human, still awake, still watching the fire, still guarding them. And in her heart, she knew this was not the end. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, a future where enemies could become something more, a future where, against all odds, hope had survived the cold.